This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show.
Let's do this.
Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 120. And tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
Tam.
Hello.
And Thalen.
Hey.
So tonight we're going to do something a little different than I think anything we've ever done in any of our episodes. We're going to address a comment from one of our listeners. Like, directly address a comment from one of our listeners.
We actually have those.
It's always shocking that people listen to our podcast, but so last week we talked quite a bit about World of Warcraft, and one of our listeners just commented to me as she was listening that, man, it sounds like it physically pains us anytime we talk about World of Warcraft. And I guess on some level she was curious as to why, or did we even realize it sounded like that? And I know personally I didn't realize it sounded like that. I thought it sounded like anytime we talk about any game, like even when we talk about like Final Fantasy XIV, we oftentimes dwell on the bad things, because that's usually where the conversation points are, is picking apart what isn't working. But I thought it was interesting that was someone's take on us and World of Warcraft.
So, you know that saying, you can never go home again?
Yeah.
Like, that's me in World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft was my home. Like, World of Warcraft is where I met, I'm pretty sure, almost everyone here. Like, we played this game for literally years. Like, if you did a slash played on my character, I had over a year played. And, like, so much good stuff happened from that game, but over time it changed, and it kept changing, and it sort of became something I didn't recognize and something I wasn't enjoying. And so I have all of these really fond memories of this game, but now, like, I also have all of these memories of mediocrity from when I stopped playing.
And is it that the game is like mediocre, or is it just that it's not living up to your memories?
I think it's actually compared to some of the other games that I'm playing now, it's not as much fun. It also feels like there's some things that I definitely rail on, like the fact that you seem to fight all of the friends that you've made, or like your character always does the wrong thing, but there is stuff that has existed from the beginning of the game, and just time has worn down everything to be a very sharp spike. Like, there was PvP at the beginning of the game, but Tam, like, your thing with your, like, RP organization was all about getting the Horde and Alliance to, like, stop the fighting and work together against the big existential threats. Like, that was our sort of in-game purpose all the way back in vanilla, and it's always been just, nope, we're gonna contrive another reason for the Horde and Alliance to fight each other.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, it feels like there were so many points where people could have buried the hatchet for the greater good and, you know, fought the bigger, badder, worse enemies, but it always ends up falling back to, you know, red versus blue for the sake of red versus blue.
You know, and I'm thinking about it right now, and it's not that the game has, like, gotten worse or anything, it's that the game hasn't grown. Like, the game has changed, but a lot of the core philosophy that existed in vanilla WoW is still there, and I think that I have changed around it. And this is back to, like, it always feels like I'm trying to go home and you can't go home again.
Yeah, that's at least part of it for me. Is I am not the same person I was 10 years ago. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a big part of it for me also, and some of it It's also my tastes in games have changed, and I still play WoW. I'm actively playing WoW, but I think that there are a lot of better games out there, and I get sort of frustrated with myself that I end up going back to WoW over and over again because it's the game that everyone plays, even though I know that there are games that I like much better out there. And so that's part of what sort of pains me sometimes to talk about WoW is even when I'm enjoying it, I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking, man, I wish, I could have all of my friends playing WildStar like this. I wish I could, get into Final Fantasy 14 and get into a rhythm like this. And, for whatever reason, those things just don't happen. And so I end up playing WoW.
Well,
So-
and okay,
As someone who has very recently returned to the game after not playing for an entire expansion, I'd say that I don't really feel bad about being back. And there are things. It is. I did have unpleasant things to say last week because the story is still complete and total nonsense, and I don't like it anymore. But there are still some things to like here. And mechanically, the game is a lot stronger than most of its competitors.
yeah. It feels like, especially leading into this expansion, the game is in a better state than it's been in a really long time.
I would definitely agree with that.
Because a lot of the change, like they made drastic changes, and they always make drastic changes leading into an expansion. But this time around, it feels like, I don't know, it's just different. Like they maybe made, less knee-jerk changes and more, this is really a problem with this class, and the class should, feel better and not just be different for the sake of being different. But to address what I think Thalen and Grace just said is the problem that I have is that there are so many games that I think to myself, man, I wish I could reach the mass of people that are playing World of Warcraft in this or that game, but it's so, like, once you've been playing games like this for, in my case, 2 decades, it's really hard to try and create an entirely new infrastructure for the purpose of playing a game. Like, it's really hard to give up the familiar contacts that you've made over those 2 decades and branch out on your own into a completely different game.
Yeah, it really is.
I just don't have the energy anymore to make new friends the way that I once did. And I don't know what that says about me or what that says about the games. And the games don't really do a good job of forcing people that don't already know each other to work together and work together in a way that builds lasting connections.
Yeah.
So like there's not situations happening in these games that puts us in situations where now I have to make a friend on the fly and really quickly, do this objective with them, because otherwise it's not going to get done for either of us. There are systems in place that, are proxies for knowing people. And because of that, I'm just I'm stuck in my own little shell, and I'm comfortable with the large group of people that I know, and I'm not willing to jettison everyone and go to a brand new game and build an infrastructure on my own. So instead I try and, convince people to go play these other games, and then that lasts for a month or two, and then, it's over.
And I mean, I've done some of that. I've gone to other games and tried to either build a community for myself or tried to, to join other existing communities, and it's worked with varying degrees of success. But it's then you sort of end up with an even ever-growing problem of, well, now I have additional friends in even more games, and
Yep.
something else new or something else, catches my attention that I want to play, that there's even more people who won't be there, or maybe some of them will, but, it's frustrating, and it's a frustration of sort of having internet friends that have, grown with you over decades.
Well, and then it leads to the even worse problem of when something new is on the horizon and now 5 different pools of friends want to play it, but they all want to play it in different ways or different factions on different servers. And you have this feeling of split loyalty of now who do I choose to play with for this game? And to tie it back to it, like, the server I started with in World of Warcraft and the group of people that I originally played with just are always kind of there in the background, and it requires no thought or effort to pick back and start playing again. And not so much the whole sunk cost issue that we talked about last week, but I know I have infrastructure waiting on me. So it becomes a super easy decision to make. Like, yeah, I'm going to have some fun for as long as it lasts, and I accept the fact that it may or may not last forever. I know that, I can go get some fun and enjoy time with people that I haven't probably seen in a while.
Yeah, I just don't have the time that I had when I was playing WoW to like build sort of the identity I had in Argent Dawn originally, which sort of allowed me to meet people and get into groups and stuff.
And I think I've come the closest to that with Final Fantasy XIV. Like, I have connections on that server, but a lot of that's through Twitter, and, one way or the other were connections that I largely knew because of, World of Warcraft.
And Twitter, for me, has, been really huge in being comfortable moving around between games, because between Discord and Twitter, I know that I can keep in touch with the people that I care about, that I've accumulated in various places. But I think going back to the WoW question of why WoW sort of evokes that pained feeling in our voices, it's partially because, when I played WoW, that was the very last, when I was playing WoW before I transferred to a million different other games, it was the last time where I had, one community of people and everyone was together and playing the same game. And the moment that I stopped playing WoW for the first time and wandered off to, various other games is the moment that sort of disappeared.
There's almost an innocence lost type thing going on when you first break away from a game, because you can't ever put the pieces back together the same way that they were before. Like, you have nostalgia about a moment in time, and that moment in time can't exist anymore. Like, even if you tried to put it together with all the same people, that moment can't ever exist again.
And so, I still like playing WoW and I still enjoy the game, but also, I've lost touch with a lot of those people too, and so coming back and playing WoW, it sort of evokes all of the feelings of that time without any way to sort of put that, genie back in the bottle. But I'd hate for our listeners to take away that, like, we're really down on WoW and we hate WoW. Like, I'm actively playing it. I am enjoying myself more playing WoW right now than I have in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, we were talking about this before the podcast, and when we tried to piece together a list of topics, and other than raiding on Monday in Final Fantasy XIV, I've not really played any game other than World of Warcraft. Like, I've been super engaged with the event that's going on right now. And I have had positive and negative things to say throughout the week, but mostly they're a positive note. And I really hope that we see the same sort of attention to detail that's happened with this event for other things in this game, because they have really tweaked the hell out of this event to make it feel better. I know of at least 4 hot fixes that happened throughout the week to tweak one element or another. Is basically where we were at last week. Is like, it was this, roller coaster of free experience. And that led players to just AFK during events. And not participate at all because, there was really no point because they got the same experience no matter what. And then they nerfed that experience and did some other stuff that had unintended consequences and led to, a lot of play that went against the theme of the event. And then they finally tweaked it to where if you participate in the event, you get more experience than you got before the nerf. So in the grand scheme of things, it is still an amazing roller coaster of experience. And they did a good job of tweaking the carrot to stick until they got it right this time. So I hope that's a sign that they're going to do that more often.
I mean, I have a slightly different perspective. I guess, I complained a lot on my blog this week about this roller coaster and all the changes that they've made. And I think that they did end up in a pretty good place, where the event is now XP wise and everything else. It seems to be working, and it seems to be getting people to actually participate and work together. So that's good. But just the amount of changes and the drastic roller coaster of back and forth of what they were changing, it turned a lot of people off of the event, and it was frustrating sort of not knowing, if I log in today, what is it going to be like? Is it going to be worth my time or not? And I'm glad that it ended up in a good place. I wish that they didn't have to have jerked it around so much to get there.
Well, and there's still issues. The primary issue that I'm having right now is so much of the experience is now based on mini boss kills. So if you've participated in one of those, you get this huge amount of experience. But if you are dead when the boss dies, you get no experience for that kill. So there are still some issues.
Yeah, and if you're lower than level 60 and can't fly, then it's also pretty tricky to get to any of those mini bosses. But I'm okay with that still, because there's still other XP to be had sticking with the group and staying in the main area of the event. And at this point, yes, that maybe it could be adjusted slightly better, but frankly, I would rather them stop messing with it and let us just enjoy it for the week or so that's left.
Yeah, because there's 10 days. I saw someone mention that, and I didn't realize it was only 10 days, but that's all we have until the launch of, Legion, and everything else in the event really doesn't matter anymore. But, yeah, listening back to the podcast last week, I can absolutely see why someone would think that it physically hurt us to talk about this game. But I thought it would be.
I took a expansion off, so I have not much context for what it was like. But it was sort of one of those things where I wasn't terribly interested. But
yeah.
That means I don't really have a lot to talk about with what's going on right now.
Basically, what I tried to explain in person when the person talked to me is we do carry a lot of baggage in regards to this game.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. It's it's been over a decade since the launch, and if you think about how different people change in a decade, everyone's in a completely different place than they were back then. Even, I probably feel like I've changed the least, but even then, my pattern of play is different than it was back then. Hell, the raid that we were all in, that was God, I don't even remember what the hours were, but it was just something silly. It was
11 to 2?
Yeah, 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning. And I can't do that. There's no way in hell I could do that kind of schedule again. But we did it, and we, for the most part survived, other than the fact that I know I fell asleep a couple times during the raid. But anyway, that's, I think, probably all the commentary I have about this.
It was a simpler time. I feel like MMO players in general were a lot less sophisticated back then.
Yeah. You want a dissenting opinion?
Sure.
I do hate WoW. Not for what it is, because it's a perfectly fine game. But I grew up in one of the least nerd-friendly parts of the country. that still managed to be near cities. So you didn't even get to pretend that it was because you were out in the middle of nowhere. And I grew up not being able to tell anybody I played video games because that was how you got made fun of. And so MMOs gave me the outlet to meet other people that liked the same things I did. And I came to MMOs way before WoW happened, and WoW killed them. Every MMO past WoW has been a desperate attempt to gain any kind of ground against, including the one that I worked on for half a decade, has been desperate attempts to gain some ground against the juggernaut that is the only MMO that is relevant. And I can't even flee to other games because all of the changes that WoW has made to the genre that have made it not just more difficult, but impossible to play the way you used to. It's not a matter of, oh, I don't have time to do that anymore. Oh, I don't have time to build the same kind of community that I had in WoW. You just can't anymore. I've tried. I've had long stretches of time where I don't have anything better to do, and I do have a virtually unlimited amount of free time. And I jump into an MMO that looks interesting, and it is not actually possible to build communities the way they used to. Because, for a variety of reasons, but in the attempt at streamlining and making it easier to play and all of the little bits and bobs that have changed, the things that get you to meet people and turn the game into a common enemy for the two of you, which is how you bond, all of those are gone. You can't play MMOs the way I did 10 years ago. Kodra's right, you can't go home again. And I can't go home again because it was bulldozed. My remaining hope is that there is a technological breakthrough that, much like the internet, back when, because the MMOs are this interesting product of the early internet. And my hope is that the next technological breakthrough that creates social spaces the way they existed when the internet was forming, and have since been worn away, happens in my lifetime. But I don't think it will. And I can go year by year and see every attempt to do something slightly different and new, and watch a very, very well executed, expertly managed Salt the Earth campaign take what's a good idea, implement it in as bare bones as possible a way, just to make sure they don't lose anybody to it, and then move on. And in the meantime, my ability to play WoW and take the story seriously, because the story matters to me. One of the things that I really enjoyed in MMOs is playing in a world that I can take seriously. And I stopped being able to take this world seriously in Burning Crusade. So I recognize that WoW is a technically brilliant game that a lot of people love. But every time something cool happens in WoW, all I can think of is, well, I'm not going to see my friends for a while. But I know people enjoy it, which is why I mostly don't weigh in on it. Because I hate being the party pooper, as it were.
I feel like that's part of a conversation that we've had pieces of before.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's like there's this finite MMO space that used to be plenty big for all these different weird things to happen in. And then WoW came along and said, this is all mine.
And
yes, but I'm not convinced. Well, some of those things are... The game being a common enemy is why we don't have, basically, why communities and MMOs can't form anymore. But I'm not convinced that everything that was left behind was good.
I don't think so
no.
either. Not by a long shot. But the good has been thrown out with the bad. Innovation is.
I'm not sure how
stagnant.
you get the good without the bad.
You don't.
I don't think you do.
Sturgeon's law: 95% of everything is crap.
yeah,
Well, not just that though. There are, well, the way games are designed in general nowadays is not the same as the way games were designed 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So would players
meantime,
even come close to putting up with some of the things that were put up within EverQuest?
No, and I think that's a big part of the problem is
Like, even if WoW had not existed, the rest of AAA gaming would say that no, that's not a thing that we're going to be going to deal with.
well, that's the thing though, is that people were saying that when MMOs happened originally. Mainstream AAA gaming had moved past a lot of the mechanics that MMOs were doing when MMOs were first conceived. Like, MMOs have always been behind, a few years behind the AAA core, and we've put up with that because there's always these other interesting features going on, but MMOs haven't, as the internet has become ubiquitous and it stopped being special to play games online with your friends, which was the huge thing with MMOs haven't moved forward, WoW included. And so where once there was this interesting new social space, WoW and pretty much every other MMO has sort of streamlined out the bit where you have to interact with other people, because it turns out that's inconvenient.
Well, and back to, I think it was a point that Ash was making, at least on one level, was the amount of strife that people are willing to put up with in a game is not what it once was. Like, even if you take the launch of World of Warcraft, most players aren't going to be willing to put up with that level of frustration. And like Pokemon Go, for example, had a lot of problems, and I am surprised as hell that people were willing to put up with it. But it was novel and new, and it was doing something vastly different, and it was also drawing upon a property that so many people have, nostalgia for, that I think that whole sequence of events was what allowed them to deal with the fact that the servers were down and the internet was generally burning while Pokemon Go was launching in various territories.
So people don't care what the launch of a game was like after about 2 weeks.
As long as the game survives it.
As long as the game survives the launch,
but that's
it doesn't
the thing.
really matter.
That's the thing, is that Pokemon Go survived its rocky launch because there wasn't anything else for people to just up and leave. Whereas if you have a rocky launch...
I'd like to point out that Final Fantasy XIV, of all things, had a very rocky launch.
It did. And they very nearly suffered for it. It took them months to get a content patch out, and it was delayed and delayed and delayed to the point where a lot of people quit.
And I would go so far as to wager that if it was nearly any other company behind it, and if it was something that didn't have the long history of Final Fantasy, that the time and effort and money to salvage it would not have been invested. And Final Fantasy XIV would have died.
That goes doubly for FF14 because that was the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a graveyard of dead MMOs or life MMOs on life support that prove that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's that people are less willing than they used to be. I think at least part of it is to be willing to put up with the extra difficulty and problems and everything. It needs to be something new and different.
Yeah, you've got to have something really special.
Yeah. If it's just another game like the one that I could go play over there that's running just fine, then I'll probably move over to that one.
Exactly. And because let's be real, Star Wars Galaxies was a disaster of a game as far as functionality throughout significant parts of its live game, not just launch.
Yep.
But it was something special. It was something different that you couldn't get. EverQuest didn't work all that well, but you couldn't up and leave. And
it wasn't until Dark Age Camelot several years later that anyone even had an option. Because you had Meridian, but it wasn't all that popular. You had Ultima Online,
it was a completely different type of game.
It was a totally different, it was a different kind of game. So really, there was no direct competition for EverQuest.
And that's that was a lot of the case back then pre-WoW, is that there were lots of different games that all were sufficiently different. Like, City of Heroes came along, and it was, suddenly there's a superhero game.
MMOs were a genre in which different things could happen. Now they are WoW. And there's no space to do anything different. Either you do something new and interesting that WoW copies, or and takes your player base with it as they return to the thing that they've invested their time and energy into, or it doesn't get done because WoW can't do it.
Well, and I think the other big stumbling block is just how many resources and how much money it takes to build an MMO.
The level of quality that is demanded at this point is so high that there's no space to take any risk.
Well, I wonder how much of this is just a natural result of the medium maturing.
I'd like to point out that first-person shooters that are not Call of Duty can still exist.
Yeah.
And there's definitely been MMOs that tried to change things up or do interesting things. They just didn't end up sticking around. I mean, one of my favorite MMOs ever was Glitch. And, it couldn't stand up to WoW, that's for sure.
Yep.
And now it's Slack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem is that people want something different, but they aren't actually willing to fund something.
They want something different.
Well, no, like they say they want something different, but they're not willing to fund something different, for lack of a better term. I think the whole free-to-play thing, while it has saved some games or more so kept some games on life support, I think it's hurt all the games as a result, because it has taught players that no, they really don't need to spend money on this. That, there are other options where they don't have to pay a dime.
Yeah.
And they take pride in not paying a dime.
It was a move. The move to free-to-play MMOs was a move of desperation to try to find some ground with which to establish a foothold against WoW. And
the hope that if you could at least get people to try your game, maybe they'd stay.
Exactly. And it was the thing that WoW was never willing to budge on. And so it was like, okay, here's a place where we could get some ground. And what it did was it drove down the value of non-WoW MMOs. Well,
it's taken and turned MMOs into a commodity and not an experience that you're really going to pay money on. It's everybody's got an MMO, so I can go download all of these free MMOs and play for a little while and get my fix, and then move back to whatever game genre I liked better. Yeah, I mean, people are more than happy to spend more money on Candy Crush than on a free-to-play MMO.
I mean, I am completely part of the problem, because when I was really into WoW, I had disposable income, and now I don't. And I absolutely, pride myself on playing free-to-play games, because I kind of have to if I want to play more than one game at a time. And I mean, I'm playing WoW right now on 2 different accounts without paying a dime. So even WoW is doing it.
Yeah. But I just feel like the whole free-to-play thing, though, drove down the value of the experience to where you very much value the MMO experience. You are playing free-to-play because circumstances dictate that you play free-to-play. But there's a lot of players that don't feel the MMO experience is worth spending any money on. And that's a significant difference between I don't have the money to spend on something and I don't value it enough to spend the money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I disagree slightly on that, because I feel like even if I had the money, I would probably still be playing several games free with in-game currency because I can.
I feel like the in-game currency thing is slightly different.
Yeah, I mean,
because the game is still making money off of you.
Right. Yeah, that's my feeling on it. And I don't and to be fair, like the actual free-to-play games that I have played, when I was actively playing them, I bought things from the cash shop or did other things when I could to try to actually support the game. But I know that that's not a thing that most people do.
Yeah, because the player that I'm talking about specifically are the ones that I've seen talking in general chat, priding themselves on not spending a dime and badgering dev staff to make, this item or that item free instead of, making them spend money on it. And I feel like that, to that player, the game is not worth spending money on. Not
Right.
that they just can't spend money, because like I totally get not being able to spend money on something. It's just, it bothers me when there's a culture of it's not worth spending money on.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get that and I sympathize with that. But there's also, at this point, there's a whole host of games that would be ghost towns, even if they could still afford to stay open and active. There would be, so few people around that they would feel bad for the players who are still there.
Yeah.
So, I'm not really sure how to deal with that without some form of free or reduced cost way to play.
Mandatory gaming. All citizens must play at least one MMO. Required. Problem solved.
So I know we had a different order in the topic, but I'm revising the order just because I feel like this directly ties into something that Thalen was talking about before the podcast.
I had the same thought.
Yeah. So
So I was reading one of my comic book blogs that I follow, and one of the writers wrote a thing about basically he called it the lost days of Gonzo, and this all came from him watching an old interview with Frank Zappa from years ago, talking about basically how the music industry, basically the fall of the music industry, and basically Frank Zappa talking about that the music industry used to do new and different things all the time. And the reason it did it was because the people who were in charge were so completely out of touch with the youth market that everything was weird to them. Like they had no idea what rock and roll, why anybody cared about rock and roll, why anybody wanted to listen to it. It was just this noise. So some new person comes along with something different and weird. It's like, okay, everything we're doing is weird and the kids love it. Let's give this a try. Why the hell not? And maybe it succeeded, maybe it didn't. Who the hell cared? And he took this and thought and so nowadays more modern music executives have grown up on that music and they're fans of the music themselves, and so they have opinions about it, and they all have degrees in business and marketing and all that stuff. So it's too important and they're cautious and they already have their ideas about what the audience wants. And so there's no room for that weird stuff anymore. And he came to the realization that basically that applies to modern comics too. It's the exact same thing. Back in the 60s and 70s, there was all sorts of incredibly insane stuff being written. There were writers like Bob Haney and Robert Kanigher that would never get work today because the stuff they wrote was just like fever dreams. And basically it was the same sort of thing, that not only were the people who were in charge not remotely in touch with the audience. I mean, Stan Lee was in his 50s when he started writing superhero comics. And the people who he worked for were older than that. But, on top of that, comics were disposable. And so, if one failed, oh well, we'll try something next month and maybe it'll succeed.
And the collector market for comics wasn't really a thing that existed.
There wasn't one.
It was a periodical
at all. Yeah, it was utterly disposable. It was junk culture. Nobody cared. Nobody studied it. Nobody wrote about it. Nobody thought of it as art. It was just this stuff. And yeah, a lot of it was garbage. I mean, some incredibly awful stuff got written back then. But that's also how we got things like Spider-Man and, stuff like the Doom Patrol and, stuff like that is critically acclaimed since then, and amazing things have been done with. All because there was this space for weirdness, because to a great degree the people in charge didn't know, and to a great degree didn't care. And it seems like there's some element of that in pretty much any media, I think. And I kind of think that applies to what we've seen over the years in games, and maybe we've reached that point where the people making games now grew up with video games and are fans of video games, so they have existing opinions about what games should be, and they're not willing to try new weird stuff. And I don't know.
I mean,
what do you guys think?
It's also like, I don't know if this is that or as much as it is the businessification of games and music and culture.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's to some extent it's kind of the Wall Streetization of things, to where everything has to turn a profit, and that's its only purpose for existing.
It all has to matter.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of money that goes into making one of these now.
Oh, absolutely. There's an article that I was reading the other day talking about how our focus on Wall Street profitability is stagnating American businesses, to where there's not much money spent on R&D, and there's not much money spent on, groundbreaking technologies. It's protecting the profitability of the product line or of the company. And to some extent, it feels like that's also happening in games, to where we are following models that were once profitable and have a very clear line of, this is what this product should be, in the hopes of repeating performance and making more money off of it. And that, I mean, to some extent, that's the whole chasing of WoW concept. Is it was super profitable, so all MMOs from that point on should be WoW.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a result of like people who are in the industry now having grown up on games, or as much as the fact that the amount of investment going on into games is large enough that people are trying to protect their investments. Or maybe it's just, alternatively, investors have their own opinions now and are more interested in being hands-on.
Yeah, I suspect that's part of it too, I think the other thing with comic books is that now, like, they're taken seriously now, to a degree that they didn't used to be. These characters are big money makers, so we have to be careful with them. And I think maybe video games, got to that point where people realize, oh, there's a lot of money that can be made here.
Well, and I think the big problem there is these tales are told that are myths of the outliers, not the average game. So people talk about the Call of Duties, or even the World of Warcrafts, these games that were phenomenal successes, but in the pitch, nobody's talking about the games that fail horribly and make no money at all.
Well, or even just the ones that were aggressively mediocre. Like, I mean, people remember Doom, and they remember Call of Duty, and then on the other hand, they remember Daikatana, and stuff like that. But there's this whole mass of stuff in between that mostly people just kind of forget.
Well, and there's, I mean, an even bigger slice of the pie is all of the games that never come out. Like the unreleased games. There's a lot of risk associated with video games, and so people are trying to mitigate the risk in business speak.
It's not entirely about money. Like, I don't think that it's any more about money now than it was in the 80s. But it's that bit about the people calling the shots have opinions. Like, we vaunted made for gamers by gamers a while back, and like, as a gamer, I put a lot of like really special effort into trying to understand games I don't like. And that's not something that very many people do. Like, that's just not a thing that happens, because why would you? Why would you spend your fun time with something that you don't understand or you don't like? And if you aren't doing that and you're calling the shots on games, then you're going to make the stuff that you like. Like, I mean, to some extent, games being made by gamers means games are being made that those gamers like.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of why we're seeing a lot of attempts, in the past few years to recapture or recreate something that was popular, 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, people thought, like, I loved this game back in the day.
You get
I
a lot
want to
of
remake it.
Exactly.
So you're saying I shouldn't make Mighty Number 9 next month's Game of the Month?
That is its own interesting discussion. Just saying,
But it's related. It's very related.
It is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
is.
related.
And I think that Mighty Number 9 is a great example. I mean, you've got a ton of games on Kickstarter that are like,
yeah, I made this game we liked a long time ago.
Right.
Can I make a new one?
Help me remake the game that made me famous, but this time I'm totally going to do all the things that I wished I could have done the first time.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those things that they wish they could have done bogged down the experience and made it no longer fun.
Yeah.
or because we don't make games the way we did 10 or 20 years ago, the things that you thought were going to be super cool in a video game in the mid-90s aren't actually that cool. Like, we've tried it and it didn't work all that well.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody remember the early military first-person shooters where you had to manage your rations?
Yes. And if you reloaded your weapon, you lost whatever was remaining in the clip, because that's what would happen in real life.
That's realistic.
Yeah.
There
That's
are
not
some
fun.
games that do that, I think.
Yeah, and people realize that realism isn't always fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's that how much sim is too much sim. There's a certain amount of both that go into it. But like, you don't get involved in the making of games unless you love games. Like, not anymore. The money just isn't, like, that is a money thing. Like, the money's just not there. If you've got the talent to do games and you don't love games, you get paid more not doing games, doing anything else. And so there's very few people working in games who don't love them, at least at some level.
Well, there's no more cases of I accidentally got into the games industry. At least not on the creative side.
Yeah.
Like, I could see maybe like a project manager accidentally getting into the games industry, but
yeah, probably like the only or possibly on the art side, I could see somebody just getting into the games industry without loving games.
yeah, but on the art side, art in general pays shit, so I don't think games art pays that much more shit than the rest of the art industry. Like, really,
Actually, no.
artists are underpaid.
Yeah.
They're horribly underpaid.
Yeah, I think what there is of people getting into the games industry, trying to get into it for the money, are over. They're over in apps, trying to churn out something that will, hit it big and they can cash in.
Or infrastructure side, because I think the games industry is pretty much forced to pay what everyone else is to get anyone in the infrastructure side of things.
Not really.
Really?
Really?
You get to work in the games industry.
Yeah. I think, honestly, what has not happened with games is there has not been a true crash yet. And what I mean is, like, in this current bubble that we're in games, there has not been a catastrophic crash yet.
Well, I mean,
Not all the way
we got
down.
out of our one.
So
Nintendo got us out of our one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it's been that long since we had one.
It's
Right,
been
and-
30 years.
Yeah.
And so
We're
if we
about
look at other
overdue.
industries that had crashes, like comic books, when comic books crashed during the 90s, when they were slowly recovering again, there was another, birth of creativity that spawned a lot of interesting things for a period of time because no one was really minding the shop.
Yeah.
No one was paying attention to the register as tightly as they were because everyone knew comics were no longer profitable.
Yeah.
So
basically,
so
there was
we're
this-
throwing anything we can to try and make whatever we can work. And during that time period, there's a lot of cool stuff that happened. Like a lot of comics that are now phenomenally popular, like things like Walking Dead, came about post-crash.
You do, and I feel like it's worth pointing out, you do have a decent amount of creativity going on in the indie space too.
Right.
Right.
and the indie space. So the indie space is, there's a certain measure of it that's really popular, and there's a certain measure of I want to recreate the game that I loved as a child.
And there's also a certain measure of utter terribleness. Like,
Yep.
go watch.
That's back to that Sturgeon's Law thing.
Yeah, go watch Jim Sterling's Best of
Greenlight.
Best of Steam Greenlight.
There's a lot of
there's a really
shovelware.
good game in there, but mostly it's not.
But mostly it's just somebody took the stock Unity assets and made a Space Invaders clone. Enjoy.
That's
Actually, they made 60 Space Invaders clones and shoved them all onto Steam.
And I wonder, to some extent, like, the thing with music, and honestly, to some extent, comic books as well, is the amount of investment to listen to a song and decide I like it, or flip through a comic book I've never heard of and decide if I like it, is way lower than a game. Because I was thinking, my immediate thought to there's all this creativity in the indie space is like, well, there's also all this creativity in the AAA space as well, and then it's just nobody plays it because they go back to Call of Duty and so on.
There's sort of, I think, a fundamental difference between something like music and video games, which is that if I like some style of music and I want to make my own, whether it's good or it's terrible, it's very easy for me to do that. It's accessible, and if I'm any good at it, there's ways to distribute it. Whether it's profitable or not is a different question, but there's a way to access that pretty easily, and I don't know that that's quite the same for video games.
Yeah, I was actually just about to bring up this exact point, because if you think of both comics and music, the ability to create professional quality output of both in your home is so much cheaper and reasonable than it ever was at any other point in time. Like, we're recording a podcast, and if we gave a shit about it, like, we could turn out an NPR quality podcast if we really wanted to and put in the editing time.
If we spend a bunch of time learning instruments, we could just podcast us jamming for 2 hours every week.
Similarly, it is really cheap to get a decent digital tablet and do high quality art and turn it into a comic or, whatever, and sell it on one of many options for doing that.
Yeah.
Similar, like, you can write a novel at home and have it on Amazon in the morning. There's a level of cheapness that is there that's never existed, and that doesn't quite exist yet on the game space, at least for more complicated games. Like, there's Unity, and Unity does a great job of being this equalizer that's, free to build on and reasonable-ish to license for different platforms. And you're seeing a lot of indie games that have, come up in that space, but I don't think the indie space has evolved to where they can have an MMO. Like, indie MMOs are still not really a thing on a large scale because infrastructure still costs money.
Well, I mean, you can still be a comic artist or a musician and have a day and be that as a hobbyist until you get your big break, which is not really all that feasible with games.
I mean, I want to make a point, like, not to disparage in any way the amount of talent it actually takes to make good art or good music or good comics. Like, it absolutely takes skill and talent, at least as much to do that as it would to make a game. And it's not like something that anyone could do. But the cost of the tools that you need, if you have that talent, to make something that's professional quality is pretty different. And part of it is, the things that we expect now from video games end up almost demanding either a team of people or In the case of smaller indie games that may only have one or two people working on them a ridiculous amount of time, and that's before you've made it, before you know whether you're going to make a dime off of this thing. And that's kind of terrifying.
Well, and honestly, we're not willing to accept programmer art or programmer music anymore.
Yeah.
Like, programmer art is a thing. Like, it's...
Yeah.
And to be fair, Minecraft started with programmer art, but it changed really quickly to having someone actually, doing that sort of stuff for, him.
I mean, you can have a really great game that's made by one person. I mean, something I was trying to think of a second ago is Stardew Valley, which is amazing and made by one guy. But
it is so rare. It's so rare though for somebody to have all of these skills in one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really difficult.
And then the game had to get discovered. Because, you could make the most wonderful game ever as an indie, creator, and you just basically get skipped over.
Well, and honestly, the problem is indie darlings like Braid, for example. I don't know if it would be as successful today if it were released, simply because there is so much other stuff out there that you would have to wade through to finally find. Looking at the new releases on Steam is sheer madness. There is so much out there, and
that's why they filter those by default.
Yeah, but still, even with the filters, the filters are somewhat curated, so someone has to curate that product for someone else to see it. So there's probably tons of, darling games out there that we just have never seen.
And okay, somebody filtered those things. Maybe,
actually, I'm pretty sure
in all that stuff that got filtered out.
This game got noticed enough.
Yep.
Which is usually not really enough, because that list goes by real fast.
Yep. It just feels like the deck is stacked heavily against anyone trying to create a game that's going to gain traction.
It makes me think, I don't know how many people buy albums, but I'm sure everybody here bought music in album form at some point.
Yep.
How many songs on that album needed to be good for you to feel like that was worth it?
3.
Yeah, 3.
That's
3.
The number I was going to come up with.
3 was the number. That was universally the number. And back when I did not have much disposable income, I would wait until I had heard 3 songs from an album, and then I would buy it.
Yep. I had the same rule. I had to have heard and enjoyed at least 3 songs off the album.
And
I think 3 or 4.
I would say 2. I would be happy with 2.
And I'm like 2 or 3, and I had enough disposable income to buy more albums than most of my friends, so my threshold was lower. And so.
But on the other end of this equation,
12 to 15 tracks?
Yeah.
Yeah. On the order, 12 to as many as 18 if they were short.
Yeah.
See, this was when I was younger, right? Yeah, probably 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Now, it's the number's higher, but it's easier to get individual songs.
Well, right, because you can buy songs individually now. So
yeah, but now I don't buy albums. Period.
I was gonna ask how many.
I actually still
albums?
do.
I
so often.
I also do every so often.
I almost never buy individual songs unless it's some sort of pop song that I doubt that I would actually like the album. But
okay, so I don't mean I buy singles. I just don't buy albums or singles because I have streaming services and I pay a monthly streaming fee. So unless it's something that I can't get through that, like the Final Fantasy 14 soundtracks or any other weird game soundtracks, I'm not buying popular music.
Yeah.
Unless it's someone that I deeply care about enough to go through the extra effort to purchase it, which is few and far between.
And I guess where I was going to go with that is, okay, so that's let's be conservative and say a quarter of the album, to be worth it. How many games are you happy with if you only like a quarter of them?
0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing that I do in games and I did with albums is I was constantly going through the clearance bin and rescuing things that looked interesting but were dirt cheap. And I found a lot of albums that I, eventually loved by doing that, because it's stuff that didn't gain traction the first time, and then they just started clearancing it out.
Yeah, whereas I tend to find if I pick up like games on the cheap in the bargain bin, like I tend to find that usually there's a reason they were in the bargain bin.
I mean, growing up, I pretty much always had to buy my games from the bargain bin, and it usually worked out okay. And now, I mean, this is another whole piece of the problem, is that often, because of things like Steam sales, I just absolutely won't buy a new game at full price unless I'm absolutely desperate for that new game smell when everyone else is playing it, because I know that it's going to be in the Steam bargain bin before too long.
Yeah, and the bargain, and since they're not physical, it'll be in there.
Well,
you don't have to worry about it just like selling out and you'll never be able to get it because you waited too long.
Well, and in all honesty, like even physical games, you can go on Amazon less than a month after a game has been released and it's already being marked down because they need to clear that inventory out.
Yep.
I do want to take a brief moment because I know somebody mentioned that there are no indie MMOs, and there is sort of Realm of the Mad God, which is still a hilarious thing.
Well, okay. But if we're going to there's also Kingdom of Loathing, which is, just as much of an MMO as that game is. I just feel like there aren't the tools available for creating MMOs that there are for creating other kinds of indie games.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, there's no indie server stack that you can build upon. Like, that doesn't exist yet. There's no, there's a bajillion, DirectX libraries that you can reference in a project to actually draw images on screen. There's not really an open source MMO infrastructure.
Yeah.
That you can build your MMO on top of. Like,
well, there is,
that's
but
not
it's text only.
Okay, yeah, but still, MUDs were a thing.
The original MMOs were absolutely indie.
Yeah, MUDs are a thing that you can still, get.
They're still around. Yep.
But even if you think about the first like really big blockbuster MMO, EverQuest was absolutely built on top of a MUD.
Yeah. It was Deku MUD with graphics on top.
With an actual IRC server, because there were ways that you could connect to that IRC server and talk on servers. You would just get banned if you got caught.
So, that's hilarious. Wow.
Because there was a super short-lived external client for talking on EverQuest that was like official, but yeah, it was basically IRC. So I feel like the indie space just isn't mature enough to have really created something to the level of a traditional MMO. And I'm not saying that they won't eventually, it's just they're not there yet.
I don't know what you call something like Pathfinder Online or similar.
I don't really think of Pathfinder as an indie.
I mean, what is it?
They kind of are.
It's about as if, I mean, they have the same, like, they're doing all of the same indie stuff as every other indie dev.
I guess.
It's certainly not backed by a major publisher or anything.
Well, I guess it's true.
It's not like... I don't think Paizo is behind that in any way other than the license.
Yeah.
I don't know that Paizo backing a game would even make it not indie.
But, well, there's that too. But they can at least pretend to be a major publisher. I mean, they are books and other things.
But it's not also officially released, is it? I mean, it's missing a lot of features.
It's definitely missing that.
The answer there was vaporware, but...
Well, so admittedly, there's a lot of games in the pipe that will be indie space MMOs, but I don't feel like there's one that's really there and is polished enough to make any traction against a traditional AAA MMO. So maybe I should just revise what I was saying. Because that was what I was meaning, is...
Yeah, okay, so what do you mean by that? Like, because is the measuring stick for all MMOs still World of Warcraft?
Yep.
I don't know if I would necessarily say that, but I mean, the games that I would also say are measured up to the World of Warcraft litmus, so indirectly.
You might not say it, but...
And
Yeah.
whether or not we would use that as our litmus, that everyone else will. So
Yeah.
it's kind of moot.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think WildStar is a very polished game experience, but ultimately that is another game that is compared to World of Warcraft. So, indirectly, anything I can compare it to is also being compared to World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
There's not another standard you hold it up to. Like, there's not another...
That's why you don't see terribly many indie first-person shooters that aren't puzzle games or doing something other than that are doing the same, like, fight people thing.
Yeah.
Does
Trying to
Call of
think of
Duty
that.
Battlefield own that entire space.
Yep.
But I'm trying to think of that one game that is like a stop-motion game.
Super Fight?
Yeah. Is it Super Fight? The one with, like,
Or
red
not Super Fight,
people that you fight?
Super hot.
Super hot.
Super Hot, yeah.
Have you
So
seen
that's-
Super Hot? Like,
Oh, it's
as indie
super...
as it gets.
Yeah, but it's also not trying to do the traditional shooter. It's trying to do
Yeah.
a semi-puzzle shooter.
Well, I mean, neither is Gone Home, neither is... I mean, there's a bunch of first-person indie titles that are explicitly avoiding doing the whole combat thing. But there aren't that... I can't think of a notable indie first-person shooter, like, where you actually shoot at people.
How indie is Spec Ops: The Line?
Not at all.
Really?
It was by a traditional publisher, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's published by 2K.
It's okay.
Yep.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Spec Ops: The Line is what happens when a major publisher is like, whatever, do whatever you guys like. And they did.
That's why I was thinking of it, but I didn't actually realize it was by 2K.
Yep.
Hard Reset is the only indie FPS that I can think of that really is doing a lot of the things that other FPSs are doing.
What was the name of that game? I've never.
Hard Reset. It's like a cyberpunk FPS.
I've never even heard of this game.
Oh, it's really good. You have like you have untraditional weapons, and you're basically fighting a bunch of androids and various AI gone wrong. But it was released initially, and it had pretty good reviews. And then they've gone back, and now that I think have money to do it, remastered some stuff. But it's a story shooter, not a competitive type shooter. So this was definitely an interesting detour conversation-wise. Do you have anything else to
When does
add?
the detour become the intended path?
Like, well, at some point, this was the path of the show. So, but I think it touched on a lot of things that we've talked about in pieces before, but like never actually strung it together into a long-form conversation.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm aware that I'm railing against a solid steel edifice as far as the whole WoW thing goes, so I mostly don't talk about it. But
I feel like you have a unique perspective since you dedicated a significant chunk of your life to working on a game that was in the same marketing space as World of Warcraft.
yeah, I mostly didn't do super well because it wasn't World of Warcraft.
Okay, do we have any other comments about this before we move on to something else?
Nope.
Okay. This is going to be the most artificial segue ever, but I know, Tam, you have things to say about Metal Gear Solid 5.
Oh, this is totally not a random segue at all. You know that bit I was talking about with like how much of a music album do you have to like to consider it worthwhile? So, okay. So I like I feel many people, I got into Metal Gear Solid in the PlayStation era. Having played like the Nintendo ones, but the Nintendo ones weren't like terribly deep or anything. But in the PlayStation era, I've got this like cool like military spy stealth game with some like kind of weird supernatural elements and lots of intrigue. Okay. And the original Metal Gear Solid was one of my favorite games of the PlayStation era, it's worth noting. Like, I don't know who else played it here.
I played it, but I did not ever get into it.
I bounced off it hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
found stuff of it as well.
I was super excited for it because like it was super hyped at that time and everybody was playing it, and I just could not get into it because stealth.
I mean, yeah, like it's a weird game, and I was coming to it from having played a bunch of Thief. So I was like, oh wow, a stealth game on consoles. I wonder how they do it. But it's a weird game. But I loved it and got into the second one, and I'm like, this is like high school, probably middle high school, somewhere in there. And so Metal Gear, and I was exactly old enough to realize that Metal Gear Solid 2 was making fun of me for playing it. Like,
Metal Gear Solid 2 was in a lot of ways making fun of everyone who played Metal Gear Solid 1.
Yeah. Metal Gear Solid, and it was like this, and it wouldn't let you forget it either. Like, you would try to forget it, and then it would remind you, forcefully in some cases.
Even the opening fakes you out as to who you're actually going to be playing.
Yeah. And like, and I mean, spoilers for whatever. Doesn't matter.
It's Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah,
we'll get over it.
Yeah.
Anything over a decade old, is common or public knowledge.
In that era, I mean, bear in mind this is also like the era of JRPGs are the coolest thing ever. It was understood that if a game was like weird or like you didn't quite get what was going on, that you should play it. You should play it to the end because you'd get it. Like it would explain it all. It would pay off your investment.
Metal Gear Solid 2 does not pay off your investment.
Metal Gear Solid 2 not only doesn't pay off your investment, it mocks you for making it. You get to the end of that game and you're treated to almost a full hour of dialogue that's basically nonsense. That like explains what is going on in the most unsatisfying imaginable way.
Like, wow, okay.
Like, you get to the end of that game, and it is revealed that not only was it all a dream, but it was all a dream to benefit somebody else who's not you.
It's a reverse Assassin's Creed 2?
Yeah. But at the same time, characters literally make fun of you for not having figured it out sooner. And it's like this ultra patronizing, like, yeah, none of this was real. This was just you were a test subject for a training exercise that we're gonna put real soldiers through. You did okay.
Well, that sounds really stupid.
Yeah, and it was like I couldn't bounce off of the game then because I finished it, but I certainly wasn't sold on the next one.
Interestingly, the next one is a prequel.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing, was that it's like, next one's a prequel, so you can find out what happened before we decided to make fun of you for liking the series. So, long story short, I checked out of Metal Gear Solid for like a decade. As it got more and more like, it's sort of one of those things that you can't listen to video game media without hearing about to some extent, especially because there's so many people who absolutely love the series. And so I have a friend who, or Inky actually, loves this series, and I couldn't understand why. And she was like, you should play this, and passes me one after a Steam sale. And so I've gotten into it because I started playing Metal Gear Solid 5, so the most recent one, which I realize I'm skipping like 3 in the middle, or possibly more, I don't even know.
Yeah, more than that if you include offshoots.
There's some number in the middle that, who even knows, man. And it drops me into this game. And I have literally zero expectations going into this. Like, just none. I'm expecting this game to be utter stupid nonsense from the word go. But I'm curious, like, why do so many people like it? So, I'll play it. I'm told that the stealth gameplay is really good. And I mentioned this to some extent in my blog, like, the first like tutorial mission is you sneaking out of a hospital because you wake up from a coma or something, some calamitous thing happened and you're in a coma in the hospital, and I don't even really know, like, you've got to you got some prosthetic limbs because your arm and leg got blown off, and you're sort of stumbling around this hospital following this other guy who doesn't really reveal who they are. I still don't even really know 20 hours into the game. I haven't seen him since. And like, you're just like sneaking around this hospital trying to get out. And the game focuses on so many weird things. Like, here's a loving camera shot of this guy's bare ass hanging out of his hospital gown. This is a gameplay mechanic later where you have to like try to find this guy in a crowd, and like that's what you have this moment with. That's like where you look to recognize somebody from behind. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I don't know, you're like sneaking out of this hospital as it's attacked by special forces guys with rifles, and then dudes on fire appear, like people made of fire, and they're blowing stuff. I don't know. It completely delivered on how nonsense I was expecting it to be. and then I'm picked up from like the middle of nowhere by guy who I was pretty sure was a bad guy in previous games, but now appears to be my gay lover on a horse in a scene straight out of a romance novel.
Ocelot, who may or may not have been a fan. Look, Ocelot's allegiance is not easily pinned down, ever.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's still true.
Sure. And we go to the point. We quickly get to the point where like now I'm sitting on a base where I'm like doing mercenary military operations to make enough money for us to get our revenge on some shadowy organization that I don't really know a lot about, but probably would if I'd played other games in the series, but I'm also probably not going to do that. And so I'm like hip deep in nonsense. Like, I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is the most homoerotic game I've ever played, like gloriously so. It's hilarious, and I'm only disappointed because I'm fairly sure the game isn't going to deliver on the intense shipping that's got to be going on here. But like, amidst all of this complete insanity, then it drops me into a mission, and it's like, okay, you need to sneak in here and get this guy out. You might want to collect information before that. Go. And as I do things, it tells me about the things that I'm doing. So it's like, okay, hey, you got close to that site. You probably don't want to just run in there. Try looking through your binoculars. Okay, so I look through my binoculars and I see a guy right up there. And then the binoculars mark this guy. And it's like, oh, hey, that guy's marked now. So having reconned that guy, now you can see him moving around. Like, you can keep track of that person, even through walls and stuff.
I don't think binoculars work that way.
These are
they do in video games. It's cool.
They're like special binoculars,
binoculars.
Special high-tech binoculars in 1985. I have a little hollow wristwatch computer. It's also 1985, and cybernetic hand.
In 1985.
Look, it's not important.
The feasibility of these technologies is not important to this story.
It's really not. This is a world that with a completely straight face will tell you that technology has not actually advanced in 30 or 40 years. It's just the government was hiding it. Like, technology hasn't advanced since the moon landings. It's just the government didn't tell you about it. So there's people with like crazy, like, we cloned human beings in 1968 perfectly or whatever. It's not important. But it's this really, really cool, like, recon and then stealth thing. And then I inevitably mess it up, and there's this actually really neat combat engine where I can, ride around on a horse shooting people with a gun and, set traps and lure people out and do all sorts of interesting things. And as I play this game, I realize it's like probably top 3, top 5 stealth games I've ever played. It just also comes with all of this nonsense. Like, I haven't even met Quiet yet, but I suspect that I'm going to regret it once I do, from everything I've ever read about her as a character. But like, I've also just been playing through the entire game as a female snake character. Like, I don't know, I unlocked this thing and I was like, hey, do you want to play as somebody else? I was like, yeah. I'm not really enamored of this sort of like scarred up eye patch guy. I want to be somebody different. Let's be her. She seems cool. And the game's just like, okay, now that person's boss now. Everybody's just gonna refer to you as boss. Okay, sure. But it's aggressively strange. I mean, I go around tidbits of things that are actual like gameplay in this game. I have been stealing 80s pop song albums out of people's boomboxes. Like, just, I go into a mission area and there's somebody blasting, like, I don't know, Devo on a boombox, and I steal their tape. And now I can play that tape. I can even blast it out of my helicopter speakers. Like, my helicopter's got a megaphone on it, and I can blast 80s tunes out of my helicopter. I don't know why, but I can. There's a whole system for this. I can even import my own custom music if I want to. I spent too much time out in the field and didn't bathe long enough, and apparently started to smell really bad to the point where people I was trying to sneak around were like, hey, what's that smell? And so I had to, like, go back to base and take a shower. That's a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why any of these systems exist, other than to be there. Like, it doesn't appear to affect very much at all, but it's chock full of these insane, like, hyper-specific detail systems, and, like, just these weird one-offs.
So it's like this fevered dream of wouldn't it be cools?
Yeah. It's like, at no point did anybody say, scope creep is a problem. It was just like, oh, okay, let's put that in here. Like, and so some parts of this are, like, ridiculously developed. I found out that I can like, take a dip into a river and wash off, and I won't smell as bad instead of having to go back to base and take a shower. But it's not as effective. Like, that's a thing. I can smoke cigarettes for some reason. That's just a thing. But the smoke can.
In previous games, that would let you see, like, laser traps and stuff.
Yeah, but I haven't run into any of those. I mean, they might have those.
I mean, cigarettes have been in every Metal Gear game from the very first one.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases had no actual purpose whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean,
I think it's just an expected thing now.
Yeah. Continuing the, like, ridiculous things from previous Metal Gear games that you can do, like, I can have a box, like a cardboard box manufactured, put on a label, like a mailing address on it, climb into it, hide somewhere, and have soldiers, like, load me onto a truck and drive me to the place that I put the address on for.
Weird.
Yeah.
Because, of course
That
you could
sounds
sneak
entirely
in a box.
appropriate for Metal Gear. Yeah.
But like,
But at the same time, I can play a game where it's like, okay, here's an enemy base. I can hang out on a hilltop nearby, scoping it out with my binoculars, marking all of these targets, getting a good lay of the land, and feeling like I can actually get a sense of space and where things might be and so on. Identify targets, and then approach it from any of a variety of different angles or approaches. Everything from I sneak in here and with utter delicacy, non-lethally take out anybody I need to and avoid everybody else to accomplish my mission, or just go in there with a tank and blow everybody up, or bizarre combinations of both. Like,
Or attach balloons to them all.
yeah, and you're rewarded for fighting non-lethally by when people are unconscious, you can airlift them out by balloon in this bizarre cartoony way, and then they join your forces for some reason. And there's this whole, like, base building aspect. So you might, like, when you're doing your, like, binocular recon, you can get these upgrades for it, because there's this whole weapon and whatnot upgrading system that lets me tell like how good somebody is at various skills, and if they have skills that I need, I can like try to extract them and airlift them out. But at the same time, it's also just insane. Like, I have a hard time with games where I can't really take the story seriously, and I can't really take the story seriously here. But it takes itself absolutely deadly seriously. It's like game of gruff male voices telling you things. But yeah, long story short, it's been pushing that, like, how much of a game do I have to like to feel like the game was worthwhile? Because there have been a number of games like that recently, The Division being the big one.
Yeah, Division is what I think about whenever I hear you talk about this game. Because I think The Division had fantastic game mechanics, like the feel of moving around and shooting at things and like doing missions. If I was like playing that game in almost any other setting, I'd be really excited about it. But everything about the story and the like trappings of that game are so objectionable to me that like I can't actually enjoy playing it ever.
Yeah. And like Metal Gear Solid 5 isn't there. It isn't just like an endless cavalcade of things that I object to, but really good game mechanics. And honestly, like, if I didn't know anything about this game, I would be sitting here gushing about it with like the caveat of, man, there's some weird stuff at the beginning. There's like some weird supernatural stuff that they don't explain. But otherwise, it's this really cool like stealth action game where you could just totally opt out of stealthing if you want.
I wonder if the Japanese quotient for madness is just higher than ours. I mean, because I can think of a lot of games that are just utter madness. I mean, most of the Persona series. Games like Catherine.
Suda 51.
This one is doing a slightly different thing. This game is a satire of American military culture. And wow, is it both disturbingly apt and not quite obvious enough at the same time. I think the phrase that I used to describe it, I'm trying to find, I wrote it down somewhere just for this show. It's like I'm playing the paramilitary villains fighting against the Justice League as envisioned by Quentin Tarantino. And if any part of that sounded cool to you, you'll probably like this game.
I think the thing that's the weirdest part of the Metal Gear experience to me is I have friends for whom this series is like a cultural pinnacle of greatness. And it's like one of those things that I've just never really understood. Like, I didn't see it.
I understand now why people feel that way. I don't agree. But I also can recognize that no one is doing what this game series is doing.
And this game series from now on, apparently.
Well, yeah, well, yes. But I read a post recently, like there's this Metal Gear zombie game. I read a post recently that was somebody going like, wait, guys. Maybe this isn't what all of the storytelling we've seen about Metal Gear Survive, or whatever it's called.
That is what it's called.
It's a team of people trying to work together who have lost their leader and who are trying to build what they can off of the remains of their previous works in order to survive. This is genius.
It always feels like trying to ascribe depth where depth really isn't there.
Yeah. Or depth where depth happens accidentally. Like, I'm hesitant to say that depth isn't really there because it's like art, right? With art, the intent of the artist is a lot less relevant than the impact the art has on the viewer. And so if somebody's having like a genuinely moving, deep experience based on a piece of art that wasn't necessarily intended by the artist, like, I don't want I don't want to say that that's not a genuine experience. Like, I mean, who am I to judge that?
I think maybe a better example is I am not a huge Stephen King fan, and I'll put that out there ahead of this statement. Every time I've read a Stephen King novel, other than like The Stand and Needful Things, I really like Needful Things, but there's a point where I am hooked in to the story he is selling me until you get to the very end, and the ultimate reveal is nowhere near as detailed as the thing I worked up in my head, if that makes sense. Like, I think
Yes,
the
absolutely.
tale that people tell themselves about this game and the lore that they're essentially inventing around it isn't maybe necessarily as detailed as the game itself. Maybe it's the whole fanfic thing where there are things that are never really mentioned in games sometimes that, you know, communities of fans latch on to and in essence make a thing because there's so much of a community revolving around it.
Yeah. Well, and we live in the information age, so it's impossible as the creator to not notice that. And oh wow, has Kojima noticed it? I draw a lot of parallels between Hideo Kojima and Michael Kirkbride.
Man. So I feel like in this next bit, we're going to go from story that's potentially questionable, but game that, you know, has lots of mechanical merit to story that is really awesome and game I'm not that interested in.
I'm not going to say that this game doesn't have mechanical merit.
Oh, it absolutely has mechanical merit. I don't. Like, that's why I said I'm not that interested in it, because, like, I am super interested in this world, but I'm just not as interested in the game itself.
We are talking about Overwatch.
Yes, we are.
Yep.
So this week, man, they hyped it up constantly. The release of, we've known this was going to be a thing for 2-3 weeks now, that they were going to release the Bastion cinematic trailer at Gamescom, and I think they did Tuesday or Wednesday. It's a really good cinematic.
Yeah. You made me watch this, and I had feels about this military robot. Why
And
did you do this to me?
so here's the problem I have, at least on one level, with this cinematic. Most of the time when you watch a cinematic about a hero in a game that is entirely devoted to shooting other people, that cinematic pumps you up and wants you to play that character.
Yeah.
This cinematic makes me want to never play Bastion again.
Yeah.
Because I will be doing horrible things.
Yeah, the last thing this makes me want to do is like play this game and like especially play as this character and make him have to shoot things.
No,
because
I want to play that game. The game I saw in that trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
that's how I felt about it.
Oh,
Like, I saw that
yeah.
trailer and I wanted to play in that world.
I want to
absolutely.
play Bastion's awesome forest adventure.
Yes, Bastion wanders around the forest with his little yellow bird friend. I would play that.
Named Ganymede. They've named and already released a plush doll of Ganymede.
But like, this is the problem, right? Like, Overwatch is a technically brilliant game. That trailer was a emotional, technically brilliant trailer. Both of those things diminish the other. Because the only way you can interact with that character is by using him to shoot at other people.
Yeah.
And especially now that you know he is traumatized by the
Yes.
fact that he has to shoot people, I don't ever want to make him shoot people.
Yeah, don't make me make the poor robot with PTSD shoot people.
Yeah.
Please.
It's like if you wanted me to feel like a monster forever participating in a game in which this character is active, mission accomplished. I feel terrible.
There was significant dampness in the region of my eyes when I first watched this. But it's like, I want this other game that doesn't exist. Like, the game that's way more rich than a deathmatch. And, you know,
my
for...
theory is that Bastion would have been like... In the MMO, Bastion would have been like the faction leader. Like, I want to see them make an Overwatch movie. And I hope they make an Overwatch movie, and I will watch that, but...
I will throw lots of money at the screen if they come up with an Overwatch movie, like a real full-length movie Because every aspect of the universe that they have shown me as a movie, I have loved. Like, they've all been great.
I want to play in the world that they've built, but they won't let me. Or they
will, just not in any way other than competitive PvP.
Yeah, but that's not the world they built.
Yeah.
The world that they're showing us is diametrically opposed to the world that we're having to play.
Yeah.
And I don't know do they understand that? Do they understand they're showing us a completely different vision of the world than let's shoot each other in a tournament?
Or whatever is going on in this game, because it's not quite clear. Like, I actually have no idea what the story behind Overwatch missions are.
They're, in some cases, incredibly disturbing.
Yeah, but I feel like this is true with a lot of the stories that they eventually tell, is like, they fall in love with all of their characters, and they want to, like, they don't want you to, like, they don't know how to write good villains.
Well, they know how to write excellent villains. They just then fall in love with them and stop being villains.
But yeah, like that. I loved the trailer. I loved the cinematic. I just, in the context of the game that it is for, it frustrates me because it does. It like makes me want to play the game less, and I don't think you can call a trailer for a game that makes you want to play the game less successful.
I don't think your opinion is the majority opinion, however.
That's fair.
As much as I love this trailer, like I said, it doesn't, like, it is the exact opposite of what you would want a character trailer to be. Like, it should pump you up and make you want to go on heroic adventures with this character. And in this case, it doesn't really. Like, you know, the Soldier 76 one, yeah, I absolutely want to play Soldier Dad, and that's cool. Like, that makes an interesting, you know, reason to play that character. You know, Winston, and like the very first trailer of, you know, Tracer and Winston, and they save the day. Sure, let's go play those characters. This one, no, me playing the character is going to stress this poor little robot out. And I don't want to stress this little robot out. I want this robot to remain friends with the bird and hang out in the forest and live a wonderful life and not be like the discarded husks of robots that he trips over. So yeah, no.
But from a different perspective, it provides a bunch of insight and like a unique look into an otherwise underdeveloped character.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like what a great character they've created. It's just that it's perfectly fine as long as you don't think about it past that point.
And I don't know, like, what on earth someone who didn't know much of anything about Overwatch and watched this would think if they picked up the game and started playing it after seeing this. Like, I don't even know what you would make of that. Like, it's such a completely different world.
I will say, on a completely different tangent, this movie does an excellent job of showing PTSD.
Yeah.
Like, it does an amazing job of creating feels to understand the conflict that this character is going through and how equally horrible it makes him feel.
Yeah.
And it's a robot. Like, this is a thing that's not supposed to have feelings, but it goes through all this sequence of events that, like, you actually, I mean, it absolutely is confused.
Yeah, like you totally get all of the feels, and you're like as happy as it's possible to be in the saddest way at the end of it. Like, yay, you made the good choice.
That obviously doesn't last long because now you're fighting for us.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, wow. I firmly hope that Overwatch is enough of a success that
game gets made.
The what?
They make that game, or at least another game.
Yeah,
in that universe.
That they make more games in that universe, because I like Overwatch, and I play a decent amount of it as a kind of like fun, my little slice of competitive gaming that's so much less toxic than League of Legends that I can actually have fun with it. But like most of that is me not paying attention to the story, what exists of it in the game. It's like Overwatch, the series of cinematics, and Overwatch, the game I'm playing, are completely different entities in my mind.
I think honestly, what I want,
the story of everything tonight is we're not really paying that much attention.
I think what I really want, though, instead of a shooter of some sort, is I want Blizzard to partner with Telltale Games and have Overwatch the Telltale Adventure.
I'd play it.
Like, Tales of the Borderland is a really cool...
really ridiculous, but Tales of the Borderlands exists.
Yeah, like, and a lot of people consider that the best of the Telltale games. So that seems like a better vehicle for this story that they're dying to tell and can only tell through cinematics, is the modern adventure game trope.
Yeah. It's like the story of Overwatch for me is lamenting what could have been. Even though what we actually got is legitimately great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it is a really good game. It's just not a game I really want right now.
Yeah.
That's the problem that I have.
It's this legitimately great game that almost everybody I know who's played it and is into that kind of game thinks is legitimately great, and I can barely get any of them to play it with me.
Yeah.
And it's like...
The thing is, like, I could totally respect a game and think it's brilliant and not want to play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the problem is these cinematics don't help the lamenting what we can't have. The cinematics give us a view of this broader world that was really awesome. And then we know the real story of the game and how this is not what was intended. Like, this is not the game we could have had.
Yeah. And yet, I still hop into it multiple nights a week. Because it's fun.
I sometimes wonder whether Blizzard is seeing the sort of popularity of these characters in this world that they have built and lamenting the fact that they didn't try to complete the MMO that they were attempting, or whether
probably not, because it wouldn't have measured up against WoW.
Yeah. But I mean, I keep looking at WoW and the ways that it's showing its age, and it would really be nice to have another game with the kind of care that Blizzard can put into it before WoW dies catastrophically in some strange way.
For all that I just spent a solid 20 minutes railing on the game Blizzard created, if Overwatch the shooter is basically them laying the IP groundwork to basically try to resurrect their project, now that they know people would be into it, I'll buy the collector's edition on day one. I will cherish that terrible Roadhog statue that I will inevitably have.
I realize they probably put both Junkrat and Roadhog on there.
Yeah. Because we can't have statues of anything other than ugly villains. That's all you get in statues.
Roadhog's just misunderstood.
No, he's literally a terrorist.
They're misunderstood. I just want to blow stuff up. Is that so wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
It's literally wrong.
Everything about that statement is wrong. Like, there's no place for someone to blow stuff up and use their machine gun. I mean, when's their time?
No comment.
Yeah. That's the one thing that bugs me the most about Overwatch is how they've tried to create this narrative of, Overwatch versus, the bad guys that are a lot of times ex-Overwatch agents. Yeah, when you actually have these matches, you're a mixture of everybody. Everybody's fighting everybody.
Yeah, I mean, like my comment to Kodra, I think yesterday was, or the day before, I don't remember, was I'd be even more heavily into the shooter part if like the missions were constructed to at least be sensible. You know, if they had like, I don't know, 10 or 15 more characters so that you could have you are selecting a character from the bad guys team.
Yeah.
On this side of this mission.
And their job is to break into the vault and steal something, and your job is to prevent it.
Exactly.
And that was the way the missions were set up in enemy territory, which is like the objective shooter that I always go back to. Is like it was a clear line, like the Allied forces versus, you know, the Nazis, and they're trying to do this, and you're trying to stop them. Or you are trying to build a bridge and liberate someone, or, you know, rescue someone, and they're trying to stop you. So, like, there's clear-cut mission parameters that this is a win condition for your team, this is a win condition for the other team. And Overwatch doesn't do that, and it feels, especially in the maps, that you're going to play through the map this way, and then next round you're going to play through it the other way. And so it loses all semblance of this is a mission that you're actually doing. Instead, it just feels like this is an artificial contest. This is a tournament of people that like to shoot other people.
Yeah.
And I realize all of this is overthinking what Overwatch is, but they keep giving us the vision of what it could have been, and it's like rubbing our noses in the thing that we can't have.
I mean, I feel like that's a theme for almost everything we've talked about tonight, is like, as long as you don't think about it too much, it's fine.
Yeah.
And I sort of reject that as a philosophy. Like, I shouldn't have something ruined for me just because I thought about it too much.
Yeah, it's like these videos are the exact opposite of the Team Fortress 2 character videos, you know, because those were very explicitly about these characters, and they shoot people and hit them with shovels and things, and they're all crazy.
Yeah, there's no world in Team Fortress 2.
Right. And I mean, and all the characters are super slapstick, and, you know, it's comedic violence.
Yeah.
There is nothing comedic violence about the Black Widow video, for example.
Yeah, and Blizzard is like putting all these feelings and emotions into these characters, and yeah.
But I also the fact that they're still releasing these after the game's launch makes me think that this is like, we are building an IP.
And I hope so much that, like, at BlizzCon this year, they're like, you guys love Overwatch, you love these characters, we're going to give you an actual game now. Not
this year, probably going to get the Diablo expansion, right?
I'm okay with that. Don't get me wrong. I'm all about Diablo expansion or Diablo 4 or whatever that ends up being that they keep teasing. I'm okay with that. That shouldn't negate the fact that these characters deserve a narrative experience that we can play. And I guess that's what makes it tragic, is like, they've created really good characters, like extremely good characters. I don't know if I have anything else to add.
I want a game to be the game that I play again. The big one.
You can't go home.
Yeah, I just don't even know if that's ever going to be a thing. Like, we are way more fractured than we were at the time of, like, the World of Warcraft or even the EverQuest launch.
And the media, and, like, the saturation is so much higher.
And the problem is I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen Brain Candy, the Kids in the Hall movie.
No.
It's about a pharmaceutical company, and they're talking about how they missed, like, you know, National Arbor Day and didn't have a drug for that, and they missed, you know, some other holiday and didn't have a drug for that, so they really need a Christmas drug or whatever holiday. And it almost feels like there's just this constant churn of, there has to be the next new game. There has to be the next new game. And in order to keep eyeballs on the game sites, in order to keep, you know, people hitting Steam, there has to be something new every week. And during the era of, like, the EverQuest launch, there were entire months without games announced, like big games announced. So I think we had more time to spend on each individual one than we do now. We're constantly being bombarded with more stuff. And I mean, I personally lament how much stuff that I would like to do but then don't because I have other things that I want to do as well. Like, I feel like I don't have anywhere near enough time to play games at the level that I would like to play them and the number of games that I would like to play. And I think it's but anyway time. Anybody else have any topics that they want to discuss tonight before we wrap things up? Since we've gone on for a while.
Nope.
Okay, well, that was interesting. That, I think, is the first time we've ever really started a topic based on question that one of our listeners had brought up, and in reality, like, there was this thread that wove through the entire show that I think spawned off of that. So hopefully it is not a painful show to listen to. Like, hopefully it won't traumatize people because we,
The next time we talk about games, I'm going to probably be talking about a game that I'm really excited about, so...
Yeah.
Next week we're supposed to be talking about The Witness.
Yeah.
Yay.
But I think it was a good conversation regardless. Even if we were not the most chipper people in the world tonight. But anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the show and will join us next week as we talk about The Witness, the August game of the month. And anyway, with that, good night.
Good night.
Good
See
night.
you.